try, try and try, try and try. You could see that light.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to join me here today. Today I would like to discuss with you about the upcoming Island Council elections on the 18th of March. My name is Chris Johnson. I am your number 2 candidate on the WIPM party, and I have been Commissioner here on the island since 2007 for the last 2 terms or 8 years. This upcoming election is very important for the island of Saba. You know, through the last few weeks and months, I'm sure that you've heard information from both of the parties about the issues of this election, about things that are taking place or not taking place on the island of Saba. And I would like to speak to you today about the actual importance and the relevance of this election. You know, something like this is once in every 4 years that we have to make a decision about who will be representing the island of Saba, not just here on the island but abroad. Especially, you know, when we look at the makeup of Saba, we have to realize that we are part of a constellation together with Bonaire and Statia, but part of Holland. We are under the Netherlands. And the Netherlands is a country of 17 million people. We down here on the 3 islands only have a little over 20,000 people. So when we were part of the Netherlands Antilles, we used to have 1 senator seat out of 22 members. And we always talked about a democratic deficit. We said that, you know, Saba was basically overruled by Curaçao on almost every issue. Even St. Martin felt that they were dominated by Curaçao as a larger island. So if we thought we had a democratic deficit then, can you imagine now that we have to deal with the 2nd chamber of the Netherlands of 150 members, the 1st chamber of the Netherlands Dutch government, which has 75 members. You're dealing with a country of 17 million people in the Netherlands, a first world European country. And that is what we are up against. You know, I'm not saying that we are up against them in a bad way. What I'm saying though is that it's very hard to get our point across. You need proper representatives to be able to do that, to be able to represent Saba and negotiate on behalf of the island. I can tell you that it is not an easy task when you're dealing with the Dutch government. You have many different ministries, you have to deal with the cabinet, you have to deal with secretary generals, director generals, civil servants across the board. And you have to fight for every single thing that you get. And I feel that during this election, there has been a lot of misinformation going across there about really how do we get our point across? How can we get what we want to get for Saba? And how can we truly be represented as an island? And it seems like people are spreading about me personally to say that, oh, well, Chris Johnson just goes to the Netherlands and he agrees with every single thing that they say. He basically accepts everything that's given to them. And I want to say that that is not the case. The same laws you have in Saba are the same laws you have in Statia and the same laws that you have in Bonaire. For example, when the tax law was put in place for these 3 islands, Bonaire was not even to the table anymore. They refused to discuss it. Statia was going through multiple shifts of government. Saba was to the table, but we gave clear objections. They had 4 different drafts. At the end of the day, 2 months before 2011, the Dutch government went ahead through the 2nd chamber and passed a law. That is what they do. You know, there is a reality of becoming part of a country. And the reality is that, yes, we can lobby for stuff, we can ask for stuff, but we are not an autonomous country. We do not have the right to make our own national laws. We do not set our social levels. We do not do things like that. So if anybody is trying to mislead you during this campaign and make it seem that everything can be corrected on Saba, then that is incorrect. And I want to tell you here today that me personally, I have been very honored, very proud over the past 8 years to be able to represent Saba. And if you vote for me, if you elect me again, I would be very honored to do so for the upcoming 4-year term. To illustrate my point, I would like to go back to a few months ago and show you all a clip. This is a clip from the evaluation committee that was here. And these are some of the thoughts that I gave to the committee when they were here. Let me explain very quickly. This year will be an evaluation year. Every law will be evaluated, or in groups of law, the effects that they have on our people, the effects that they have on our island and its future. This is an extremely important topic, an extremely important year. The members of the evaluation committee made it very clear that they are waiting till 2 weeks after the election, and then they're coming back. And as soon as we have a new government put in place, they are coming with subcommittees, with delegations, and they are coming to evaluate our entire system. And when you look at the committee that you'll see in the upcoming clip, you'll see a former minister, Minister Lisbeth Spies. You'll see a former State Secretary, Mr. Frans Wakers, a former governor, Glenn Today, 2 constitutional lawyers. Mr. Glenn Today is also the president of the University of Aruba. So a very high-level delegation, a very high-level committee. And these are the people that we have to talk to. So please enjoy this next clip. Maybe some of you have seen it before, but if you haven't, please take the time to refresh your memory. And you will see that these are the issues and the questions that I have been raising as Commissioner of Constitutional Affairs. So take the time to view this clip, and I'll be back with you shortly. Thank you.
We do this only because there were a few people who asked us to do that and who formulated the task about the evaluation. And one of them is Mr. Chris Johnson, Commissioner of Constitutional Affairs. We talked this morning with the bestuurscollege, with members of the Eilandsraad, and I think Chris will inform you all about his remarks.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. Can you all hear me? Oh, there. If I start choking, it's because I'm wearing a suit. I'm not used to wearing a suit, but Glenn today came in this morning all dressed in his suit, so I thought I had to show him up this evening, and now I'm in a suit and he's there relaxing. So I'm a little jealous, but okay. Well, thank you very much, Lisbeth. Like you said, I'm part of the work group. That's not the committee itself, so I'm not trying to sit up here to pretend like I am part of the committee. We have quite some heavy hitters and from the kingdom here in this committee, and you can hear by their resumes that it's very impressive. And I look forward to the fact that when they make a report, I think it will be respected on all sides of the oceans in the different countries within the kingdom, but especially for the country of the Netherlands. One of the things or reasons I wanted to speak here a little bit this evening is because sometimes, you know, when we have closed doors sessions, people wonder, what do we talk about in those? You know, I have people tell me, well, if you only told the Dutch government this or you told them that, you would get everything figured out. So I wanted to explain a little bit about our discussion this evening and about our discussions that we've been having over the last months, also from the government, from myself, my colleague Bruce Eggers, that we try to bring over on behalf of the people of Sabo. One of the things that I mentioned, that I asked when we had the party leaders, what they call Dutch, the fractievoorzitters, came here a few years ago, and I asked a very simple question, and I said, are we part of the Netherlands, yes or no? And I asked them that question, and of course, all of them, as good politicians, they all said, of course, naturally, yes, you are. And it seemed to be the easy answer for them. I said it's a very easy question, but it's not necessarily an easy answer. The problem that we face, I believe, that we feel here in Saba that we face, but also in Statia and Bonaire, is that there's a certain level of hypocrisy when it comes to legislation, when it comes to levels, when it comes to the way the island is treated by the Dutch government, by the laws that are put in force. And what we brought across as a message, what we do bring across as a message, that there seems to be, like I said, a level of hypocrisy. When in certain areas you're told, yeah, maar jullie zijn onderdeel van Nederland, you all are part of the Netherlands, you have to have this law or that law. But when it comes to social levels, when it comes to different provisions, we are told that we are a different 3 islands, that we live in a different part of the kingdom or a different part of the Netherlands, and we have a different set of services. I think for us, it's been very clear the last few years that when we talk about things being acceptable, when we talk about things being unacceptable, there are things that have gone well. We're not going to say, I don't think anybody in Sabo will say that there aren't. There are certain things that have gone well, especially us from government. We have a budget that is financed. You know, we have different projects that we're able to carry out now that we never were able to do. But when you have a pension level that is below the poverty line, when you have a welfare level that's something like $120 every 2 weeks, those would never be considered acceptable in the Dutch part of the Netherlands, in the European part of the Netherlands. And the question we ask is, why is that acceptable over here? We ask that to politicians because, like I said, I think if anybody in the second chamber or any Dutch politician came and said that they would want to have a different level of pension in one part of the country than you had in the other, the politicians, no matter what political party they would be from, they would come together, they would make passionate speeches, they would say, but we are part of one country, these are national rights that we have, and everybody from the VVD, the PVV, all the parties, the Labour parties, they would all agree together that this is what we stand for and this is what it means to be part of one country. The question then we have is, we have about 20,000 people on this side of the ocean, which is 1,000th of a percentage of the entire Dutch population, and we want to know, why do we have different levels? Why is it acceptable here to have something that is below the poverty line, like the old age pension, like the welfare, and why that is accepted by our politicians in The Hague? That is something we've been bringing up. Those from SABA know we brought it up to the Prime Minister, we've brought it up with different delegations, and we again bring this up to the Evaluation Committee to carry with you all as an initial question of why is it possible that we have such a difference between what is considered acceptable here and what is considered acceptable in the Netherlands. The other issue we brought up this morning from government was about practicality, common sense. I don't know if many of you know the story of SABA with the road. They told us that the road could not be built. I believe it was a Swedish engineer and a Dutch engineer. I have a different theory. I think it's the road that they didn't want to build. I can imagine a Swedish engineer and a Dutch engineer sitting somewhere in the 1920s thinking that they have to go back to Europe and explain that some little island in the middle of a sea in the Caribbean needs about 40 million guilders to build a road at that time. Two of them probably thought, let's save our job and just tell them this can't be built. Because you can build dams in Holland, you can build dikes, and you're telling me you couldn't build a road on SABA? So I'm a little cynical about that. But SABA people took it upon themselves to go ahead and build a road. People have survived here for 400 years, and they've had to do so by being practical, by using common sense, by seeing what works and what doesn't work. And we see that in government, and that's something that frustrates people here. When we have European type of policy, when we have legislation that makes no sense to us whatsoever. For example, we discussed this morning issuing of work permits. If the medical school goes to hire a professor, they have to advertise for 6 weeks or 4 weeks to see if there happens to be an unemployed microbiology professor walking around through SABA to go ahead and bring them into their school. You know, the school is very vital for our economy. And it's something that we are in a small island of less than 2,000 people. 500 of those are medical students. So we have about 1,500 of permanent residents here. And it makes no sense to us that you can't be a little bit of common sense used in policy and legislation when it seems so apparent to everyone else, to all of us, of why can't these type of things be changed. That was, you know, another example that we gave across today with the work permits. I don't want to get too heated because also they're not fully responsible for these issues. But the fact is that a lot of this stuff could be solved very easily, in our opinion, in my opinion. Of course, everybody has their own opinion. My opinion is that a lot of solutions could come, practical, common sense solutions could take place here. When we are told that we're not on the same level, so let's say for healthcare, we don't always have, it's not funded same per person as it is in the Netherlands, but then we have to read in the paper that as of January, that dental care and physical therapy and all those will be removed. So whenever there's a cut in the Netherlands, we have to take the cut here, but when there's an incentive there, we don't necessarily get the incentive over here. That's what I talked about, the double standard. The question, the fundamental question, are we part of the Netherlands, yes or no? And that is something that we hope is also central to this evaluation. Because what I also told those party leaders when they were here that time is that if they say no, they don't consider us part of the country, that's also a workable solution for us. We can get rid of immigration lines that tourists have to stand in the middle of a pier coming from one Dutch territory, St. Maarten, to another Dutch territory, and you have to have scanning and processing and all that. It just makes no practical sense. And you try to discuss it, you try to speak with those on this side of the ocean, and many have blinders, many are telling you that this is just the way it is, this is the way they're going to do it. And see them like they're butting their head against the wall. No matter what, they just continue going in one direction. And, for us, yeah, we're at a point where we want to make sure that the questions are asked about using common sense, using, or eliminating the hypocrisy. If we are part of the Netherlands, then we have to start talking about having social levels that are acceptable as they would be in the Netherlands. If we are not part of the Netherlands in that sense, then we need to get rid of the majority of ridiculous, over-bureaucratic legislation that is just stifling our economy, that is holding back a small island of 1,500 people. It has to cost more to create every single one of these laws, to have debates in the second chamber, to have aides come in to talk about these laws. Each one of those things has to cost more and mean more than it would to just say, we will allow this island to have more autonomy. We will allow the local government to issue work permits. You know, we will allow certain things to be done through ordinances instead of national legislation. So that's something I just wanted to discuss here also with people, to know that the island government is bringing up those topics, those discussions. Like I said, I'm not part of the committee, but I did challenge the committee this morning, because there are also people out there who wonder how independent you all will be. I see Wolfgang in the back looking at Frans Wakers. The amount of meetings and discussions about tax levels and all that. You yourself, when you were here as minister, you know, people wonder about the fact, will you all be a truly independent committee? And I told you this morning, I'll tell the group also, I said one of the things I've learned with European Dutch citizens are they're brutally honest. It can be a very good thing. It can also be a very tough thing to deal with. But I do believe that you all will have your own opinion. You will make sure that when you see injustices or things that are not acceptable, then that you will include that in your report. And I do truly believe that if we can do that, if you all can do that, and we can have an honest report about a situation, then we can talk about making real strides and trying to figure out how to make this island really move forward for the future. So just to let people know, that is what we're bringing over from our side of the table. I know Glenn has heard it a few times before, and France, and Lisbeth yourself also. So.
Folks, if you are still here with me at this point, thank you for sticking around. I hope that you will see by viewing of that last clip that I am not doing what many people say that pretend that I am doing during this period. You know, as I said before, they make it seem as if I go up there and I just agree with everything and all that. And you will see that every single one of those members in the evaluation committee I have had to deal with on different levels in the past. And you can see that that is the message that I bring across. When I think about this election right now, facing the SLP, the Sabre Labour Party, and the Blue, I realize that a lot of people are upset with what's taking place. But what I find is a bit unfair is that they're taking those emotions and the opposition, well, of course that's what opposition does, but they're blaming every single thing on the island government. And when you see the way that I carry that message across in the previous clip, you will realize that that is not the case. That Sabre's government is united, it's stable, but it's also very strong in its representation. So you have to look through a lot of that and then think about the big picture. What else is being misinformed during this election? You know, I hear about different items being discussed on the island. They talk about the tax structure as if it could be changed on island. I've received emails from the opposition talking about things such as kingdom laws. I've read the party program, and they talk about where they would like to have maybe one or more commissioners. You know, there are a lot of things that I see that are taking place that makes me realize that the party that is running against the WIPM party right now is not ready to run a government of Sabre and is not capable to do so. Some of the knowledge on basic issues. For example, they talk about kingdom laws. They say that the WIPM government says, oh, it's a kingdom law. Well, first of all, that's completely crazy, because a kingdom law would mean to say that we would have the same law as St. Martin, as Curaçao, as Aruba, as parts of the kingdom. We are part of the Netherlands. I mean, this is a reality that we face since 10-10-10. And if a party is going to email you and say that the WIPM government blames everything on a kingdom law, these are not kingdom laws. The best laws are passed by the second chamber. They're passed specifically for the best islands, or were included in Dutch legislation where it's listed that's also applicable for the best islands. So this means that we fall directly under the second chamber of the Netherlands, not under the umbrella of the kingdom. that this is such a basic point that when I have to debate many of the issues with the opposition party, I find it very difficult to do so because I realize that they don't have a basic knowledge of how government is run. And, you know, I've said to many people before, everybody has the right to participate in an election, but you as the voter have the right to make an informed decision about who you'll be voting for. You know, the WIPM government is not perfect, not by any means. We definitely have work to do, but we are not to blame for every single aspect of society that's going wrong. But also, you have to make sure that you have a basic knowledge of items. If you're going to talk about kingdom laws, the social levels of Saba, Statia and Bonaire are completely different than in St. Martin and Curacao or Aruba. The tax structure of Saba, Statia and Bonaire is completely different than the tax structure in St. Martin, which is different than the tax structure in Curacao, which is different than the tax structure in Bonaire. These are basic, very basic things that you have to be aware of to be able to take a position in government. And when I see the information coming out from the opposition party, I realize that there is a lack of very basic information that you need to know even to participate in government, much less to be able to run a government. So with that, I want to leave you with another clip right now. This following clip that you will see, some of you maybe have seen it before on social media, but maybe some of you were there. If you haven't, it is a clip from our first public meeting, our first public rally that we held in House Gate, Zion's Hill, at the community center. It was very well attended. We had over 150 individuals there. And it also showed me really that people are taking this election seriously. You know, we may in between have our issues, ups and downs, but people are waking up and they're realizing that this is very important. So in this clip, I will admit it's slightly different than the last clip you've just seen with the Constitutional Evaluation Committee. This is a clip in front of a large group of people to show you also that I can represent you in many different forms. And this is a clip of where I was talking mainly to party supporters. But I want to be able to share this with everybody. And that you can see that I'm a person that can represent you. I will stand up for what I believe in, and I also am part of a team that I have a lot of faith in. When I made this clip, I was the last speaker, the final speaker of that evening, and I was following the 8 candidates before me. And I can say that I was truly impressed with every single one of them. And if you haven't seen any of their videos yet, I would encourage you to find out through social media and different forms how you can be able to see their clips. And you will see that every candidate, from the top of the list to the bottom of the list of the Windward Islands People's Movement, is able to represent you and able to hold a seat. I also hit on that point in my upcoming clip, but I want to leave you with that feeling, and you can see how I close off the evening. I want to thank you for taking the time out here to view this with me today. And I want to leave you these parting words before you see that final clip. This election is a very important issue. It's a very serious matter. I have been humbled. I have been honored to be able to serve you for the last 2 terms. And if you elect me, I give you my word that I will do it in the best way possible. That is my word, and I will not break it for anybody. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you very much for taking out the time. And if you will consider to vote for me on the 18th of March 2015 for our Island Council elections, I would be honored and I would serve you correctly. Thank you very much and enjoy this final closing clip.
Last but not least, Bull from the level, none other than Mr. Christopher Johnson.
Good evening, everybody. How you doing? How you feeling tonight? To the choir, but they said the choir goes to church every Sunday, so they must like it. I tell you that the last time that I was on this stage giving a speech was with none other than Ray Hassel in 2006, and we had an election then. I think we had about maybe 10 people in the audience that evening. Ray and Amelia was there, Everton was on there also. Enough to win the election. And enough to win the election. But I was thinking about something today, because in those days we used to have an election every 3 years for the Parliament, and then you'd have an election the next year for the Island Council. And a lot of people, they would say, would vote different in a central election than they would vote in an island election. You know, central election, they would pick one candidate that they felt was the best. and they would vote for that person as a senator. Some would even vote for somebody to say not to make them feel bad, what have you. But when it came to island elections, they would look at the entire list of candidates, and they would say, is this a group of people that can run a government? And when I look here tonight, and I see the candidates that we have, and I've heard the speeches here, I'm amazed. Because I can tell you that every one of these 9 candidates can take a seat in the Island Council, and every one of them can run a government. You know, when we were setting up the list, we went according to the voting laws called the Key Sweat. It's been enacted now since 2010, so this is the 2nd election. And I understand the opposition party was not even aware of the fact that the voting law had changed. They actually thought that it didn't matter where you went on the list, that whoever got the most votes would automatically move to the top of the list. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is not the case. The reality of it is that you have to get half a seat plus 1 to move up the list. That is a voting law. It already happened in the last election in Statia. Mr. Roy Hooker was on the DP. He had the most amount of votes with 122, and he did not become a member of the Island Council. You know, I have to ask myself, when you look at that, when you talk about Sabre, you have about 900, let's say, people could vote. That's a very realistic estimation. Out of 1,056 voters, if that was the case, it would be 180 votes for a seat. You would need 91 votes to move up. And, you know, when you look at that, if you don't get 91 votes, that means all the votes go to the top of the list. So when you are talking about a blue party, the SLP party, saying that they want to take over the government, you have to go down the list and you start from candidate number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and that is the order that they would most likely fall into unless somebody got over 90 votes on their party. And those are the people who will be running the government of Sabre for the next 4 years. An election is not a 1-year period, it is a 4-year term. And I have to ask myself the question too, because if this is an evaluation year, and we are going to be talking about evaluating hundreds of laws, we're going to talk about evaluating tax laws, social levels, all healthcare, education, all of those. And if the opposition party was not able to figure out the one law that they had to, of how to run this election, then you tell me. Now, I am not standing here tonight, I am not standing here making negative slanders against them personally. I think they are all fine people, I get along with every single one of them. But I have to ask myself, if you're going to present yourselves as a party to run the government of Sabre for 4 years, then is that the party to do so? Because, you know, when we go to the Netherlands, sometimes I hear some of the rhetoric around here, and you would think that it was a bunch of Dutch people with a bag of money just waiting to hand it over to us. And it is definitely not the case. There are very few people, first of all, that even know that Sabre exists in the Netherlands. You go up there, you meet with civil servants, you sit there with them at the table. Half the time you got to introduce yourself. First you got to even explain where Sabre is, why Sabre is part of the Netherlands, and things like that. And the people who are sitting across the table from you are not your buddy at the bar. The people who are sitting across the table for you, 5, 10, 15 lawyers. Because that's what the ministries do. They make sure that their lawyers help them make decisions that doesn't end up getting the Dutch government in trouble. Correct. So when you sit there and you negotiate with them, you have to know what you're talking about. You have to research the documents, and you have to be prepared to fight for Sabre. And when like I said, when I think of a group, and you talk about an evaluation year, you talk about every aspect of our society will be evaluated. You talk about the effects of these laws. And after this evaluation will be concluded in October, there will be a whole new ring of negotiations with the 3 governments of Sabre, Statia and Bonaire, and with the Dutch government. And I can tell you something else. The Dutch government, Mr. Richard Francois, he's the Secretary General of BZK, he made it very clear to me. He said the Dutch government is no longer talking to lobbyists, they're no longer talking to advisors, they are talking to those who are directly in charge. You know, he said that they do it in the Netherlands, they do it with youth groups. They don't want to talk about people who are concerned about youth groups, they speak directly to the youth. He told me that Mike Eamon had the whole of Holland as lobbyists, 1/2 lobby for Aruba on one issue, 1/2 lobby for Aruba on the other. And the Dutch government told Mike Eamon, he said, please don't bring no more advisors or lobbyists with you. We're going to talk directly to you. So when you talk about the Blue Party, And you see them in June in the Netherlands sitting down together with the evaluation committee, not with advisors to the table, not with so-called legal advisors. They will have to sit there and they will have your future in their hands. And that is something that worries me, not just as a politician. It worries me as a father of 3 young children. It worries me as a son of 2 senior citizens. It worries me as an investor of this island. It worries me as a citizen of Sable. When you think about, I had to hear it from Paula tonight talking about our ancestors, the hundreds of years that they toiled for Sable. My grandmother was born a few hundred feet from over here. My grandfather, Daniel Johnson, also from House Gate, from behind the ridge, was a foreman on the road. And you think of how hard they worked to build up this island. And when you take that where we stand today, we owe them a debt, we owe the children a debt. Because they paid their debt to us, and now we have to pay that debt to the future generations. And if we play petty politics with our own future of this island, just because of negativity, just because of small issues, just because of hatred, then we will be, they say, cutting off your nose to spite your face. Ray said, if it's not broken, don't fix it. I say, if it's not broken, don't break it. Because that's not talking about fixing it, that we are perfect, because we have issues, we have a lot of things that we have to work on. We go there, if the evaluation committee was here, those of you who were able to see the videos, or those of you who came out, you heard me time and time again talking about old age pension, talking about the levels of welfare. Those are messages that I carry all the time. Talking about bureaucracy, red tape, why do we have to have such a procedure just to get something off in Fort Bay? Those are not issues that we set up for the island government. Those are laws that are implemented and that we have to deal with down here in our islands. And if you don't have strong candidates and a good government to negotiate for you, I tell you, we will be doomed for 10, 20 years down the way.
100 years.
For 100 years. People of Saba, the WIPM party believes in progress. We believe in development. We believe in including everybody. My motto for this year is representation for all. Even for those who would make the mistake of voting for the Blue Party, I would guarantee that I will still represent them in the coming 4 years in office.
Check the flag.
I have been in government for 8 years, and I can say that it truly has been an honor. It is not always easy. This is Saba. We're a small community. We can tell each other what we think. We were very well known for that. But when the time comes, we do stand together, and I know that we will do that again this election. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear a round of applause for every single one of these candidates. Like I said before, I can see every single one of them taking a seat on the Island Council, and that is not a fake compliment. That is a fact. I had to listen to Paula there. I said, oh my God, I'm almost ready to vote for her. I can remind myself that I'm government too. But every candidate is capable, every candidate is able to do so. And when you talk about running a government, I'll leave you with this thought. If you actually run a government, you have to have at least 3 members of the Island Council to win the majority. You need 2 commissioners, so that's 5 people. And if you got 4 seats, you would need 6 people, and you need 7 if you had a total of 5 of the Island Council members. So you don't only need, when I sat up here with Ray in 2006, it's not like a central election that you vote for a senator and you get a state secretary. You need an entire group of people to run the government. That is the reality. And it's not about friendships, it's not about family, it's not about neighbors. You are voting for the future of this island. If you have children or grandchildren or even a niece or a nephew, and if you have any regard for the future of Saba, then you will make sure that you vote for the WIPM party come March the 18th. With that, like I said, it's like preaching to the choir, but it's nice to see the family here together. Members of the WIPM party, make sure over the next less than 2 weeks, you speak to whoever you have to speak to, you try to convince them quietly. You don't have to make enemies with other people, but when you get in the booth, you do the right thing and you encourage others to do it. Come March 18th, the WIPM party will be victorious. We will carry on for another 3 years.
Rome was not built in a day. Opposition will come your way, but the hotter the battle you see. Is the sweeter the victory now. You can get it if you really want. You can get it if you really want. Yeah. You can get it if you really want. But you must try, try and try, try and try. You succeed at